Hi there, welcome back. It's Brett Hornby here, all decked out in my Calgary Flames gear because I feel heading into the Labor Day weekend here, I feel this is the right time to talk about the Calgary Flames in-house free agents, talking about their RFAs, restricted free agents, and UFAs, unrestricted free agents, and where they stand on that. This is separate from my Free Agent Frenzy video that I made back right after Free Agent Frenzy, where they made a big changes on the, especially the bottom six, and added some scoring with James Neal on the right side. But this video I'm stressing about our in-house free agents, guys that we either qualified or didn't qualify, and players that we didn't elect to resign, and in one case bought out. So let's go over this. I think this is in chronological order because I first I'm going to list all the players that they qualified and the players that they didn't qualify. We should do that before the free agent season, and then you try to sign up all your restricted free agents. Did you qualify them, at least give them at least 10% base salary increase, but then you have your negotiating rights to sign them, or hopefully not get an offer sheet. So anyway, I looked at NHL.com, which lists all the free agents, and they list all the storylines, how they list them for each team. Here's actually in chronological order of who they signed, but first the Flames did qualify 9 players, and they qualified goalie Jung, Gillies, defenseman Noah Hanifin, forward Garnet Hathaway, forward Marcin Kowski, forward Morgan Klimchuk, defenseman Brett Kulak, forward Elias Lin Home, goalie David Riddick, and forward Hunter Shakirk. So they qualified those 9 players, which gives them negotiating rights to come to a new deal. And then they did not qualify forward Austin Carroll, forward Emile Poirier, forward Daniel Pribble, forward Nick Shore, which you could say before they did the free agent frenzy, actually was kind of surprised they didn't sign him for a depth on the fourth line, and forward Hunter Smith. So that's just one of the gists of qualifying your restricted free agents, is deciding who are worth keeping, and others that you finally have to, sulk your pride and figure, I drafted this guy and he just isn't working out for the organization. Definitely guys like Emile Poirier and Hunter Smith and Austin Carroll. I mean, those are guys that the Calgary Flames originally drafted and decided it was time to cut bait. So those guys become unrestricted free agents to sign wherever they want, and when I get to the unrestricted free agents, you may not hear any updates from them. So anyway, to starting off with the restricted free agents, actually the Flames signed the first restricted free agent was Morgan Klimchuk, who was drafted in 2013, 28th overall. He's the guy that's still the final piece in the Jarome Iginla trade. That was the first round pick that they used him on. I still think this could be his last contract with the Calgary Flames. I mean, he had some injury issues in junior, and even when he was in the organization, the Stockton Heat, but he actually played one game last season and was up with the team for a few games to do some pregame twirls. So, but he signed a 1-year deal worth $700,000, and that's the cap hit. It's a 2-way deal, so his minor league salary is only $80,000. So, I mean, I expect Morgan Klimchuk, he'll obviously compete at camp, but I still think he'll be spending more time in Stockton this year, but could be the first call up if they have any injuries on the wings. And then the next guy that they signed, which is one of the big pieces that came here in the Dougie Hamilton trade, is Elias Lin Home. And he signed actually a 6-year deal at $29.1 million, which gives him a cap hit of $4.85 million for 6 seasons. I mean, he's definitely one of the big pieces, and thinking about upgrading their scoring in the top 6, and obviously, came back to that Dougie Hamilton trade, which I made a video on that, which I still think it's a good trade for both sides. But Elias Lin Home, didn't. I think the Carolina Hurricanes weren't willing to offer him that much money, so that's what made him expendable to come here. And then the next guy that they signed is goalie Jung Gillies. He actually signed a 2-year deal worth $1.5 million for a $750,000 cap hit. The quirk with his guy's deal is that in the first year of his deal, he has a minor league salary of $250,000, but then the second year he makes $750,000 regardless if he's with the Calgary Flames or the Stockton Heat. And I thinking, obviously, it's hard to say because I'll get to David Riddick, but I personally think David Riddick so far has shown that he's a little better goalie than John Gillies. But I mean, Gillies is the guy that they drafted, and David Riddick was the guy that they signed over from the Czech Republic. I mean, both goalies had their ups and downs, but you expect that with a younger goalie. I mean, hopefully Mike Smith doesn't get hurt. If we rely on John Gillies and David Riddick to be a tandem for an extended period of time, we could be in trouble again, because I don't think any of the goalies, like a Tyler Parsons or Nick Snyder, are ready to come in and play big time minutes yet. So we'll see how that plays out at camp, but I wouldn't be surprised if John Gillies and or David Riddick take their turns being the backup and occasional starter. But I think they'll eventually bounce back with as more experience. So that's John Gillies' deal. The next player that they signed is Marcin Kowski, who signed a 2-year deal worth $3.35 million for a cap hit of $1.675 million. I say he had 17 goals last season in his rookie season. He's definitely been a regular, especially on the third line. It'll be interesting to see how he'll gel with the new players that they brought in, because I think he had his ups and downs. Sam Bennett on the one side, or he definitely didn't work well with Troy Brouwer last season, but I could see, Marcin Kowski being on the third line center, hopefully with, maybe he'll still be with Sam Bennett, or definitely be there with Derek Ryan, which is one of the other key signings that the Flames made. If you go look at my Unrestricted Free Agent video about upgrading the bottom six, but considering that myself, and many other Flames fans were very critical with this pick, because he was picked 21st overall in the 2012 draft, and he was just coming out of high school, and we knew he was going to be at least 5 years away before he even think about wearing a Flames jersey. I mean, he's actually done well for being a top 9 forward. I mean, they made the mistake saying he's going to be the best player. The previous regime with Jay Feaster and John Weisbrod saying that he's going to be the best player coming out in the 2012 draft. I mean, we're still 6 years out. It's still too early to gauge that, but I mean, I still think this is a guy that they could have maybe gotten in the second round, because the two guys that I think that Calgary could have used right away, who was drafted after him, was Holy Mata, who eventually has been a solid defenseman with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Tyler Pearson, who he's been a solid bottom 6 forward for the LA Kings, but hindsight's 2020. I mean, Marcin Kowski, at least he's panned out, and I still think he has definitely some upside to definitely be a 20-goal scorer, and all not bad after all, considering all the controversy he had when the Flames made that pick at the time. So the next player that they signed is Garnet Hathaway. He signed a 1-year deal worth $850,000, which that's the cap hit, and all I can see is Garnet Hathaway is him being a fourth line check-in forward that occasionally adds some muscle, but his organizational depth, he could be an extra forward. Well, I mean, obviously we'll see how training camp pans out, if he's going to be a regular or just an extra forward, but never a bad thing to have some extra grinders in in your lineup, especially if you're playing against a team that you need to add a little more muscle. And then I believe this guy, Brett Kulak, the defenseman, who I think eventually went to arbitration, because I know his camp and the Flames were a few $1,000s apart, but he eventually signed a 1-year deal worth $950,000, which I still think that's pretty reasonable, considering he's definitely a stay-at-home defenseman in the bottom two pairing. Him and Michael Stone have made a nice bottom pair of defensemen. I mean, Calgary's has a great top four, and there's definitely some value to get some experience in the bottom six, as opposed to guys just on their entry-level deals. But Brett Kulak, I still say, definitely has some upside, and has definitely proven he can be an everyday bottom pair defenseman for the Flames or any other team. But we'll see how he does this season, if he's going to be worth it anymore. And then the next player that they signed is goalie David Riddick. But this guy, there's this deal. They signed him on a 1-year deal worth $800,000, and he makes $800,000 regardless if he's playing with the Flames or the Stockton Heat, which I get all these cap hits from the Cap Friendly website. And based on the numbers, I mean, Gillies signed a 2-year deal, but he has a minor league salary this season, and then Riddick signed a 1-year deal worth $800,000, and he gets that regardless. I mean, it's still hard to say who's going to be the backup, which is obviously what training camp's for, but I still say it was keeping both guys in the system, because, I mean, Mike Smith is 36, and I'm not too sure how long they're going to plan on keeping him. It depends how the season plays out, if he's going to play beyond this season, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent next season. But, depends how well he plays this season, if he stays healthy, and we'll see how both Riddick and Gillies, but I could still potentially see them being a potential tandem after this season. So, still a solid deal, but, goalies, they take longer to develop, and especially in David Riddick's case, he came over from the Czech Republic, so he has to get used to the smaller ice. And now, let's pay attention to what happened the next day, because the next player that actually signed a deal was Kirby Reiko. Because what ended up happening was, actually I was on holidays, they traded Hunter Shinkaruk to the Montreal Canadiens for Kirby Reiko. Both Shinkaruk and Reiko were drafted in the 2013 draft. It seems like the Flames have many guys in the 2013 draft, but Hunter Shinkaruk, he was drafted 24th overall by the Vancouver Canucks, and then Calgary traded Marcus Granlund for Hunter Shinkaruk at the time. And I used to work with a Canuck fan, and he didn't like the trade, but hindsight 2020, the Canucks definitely won that trade with Granlund over Shinkaruk. I mean, some also say that Calgary should have drafted Shinkaruk over Poirier in the 2013 draft, but I think Kirby Reiko, he originally was drafted 19th overall. I didn't check the notes before I did this, but I know he spent some time with the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens franchise. He's got more games than Hunter Shinkaruk, but pretty much I could look at this as an apples and apples trade, that both guys will likely spend more time in the AHL, and who knows, maybe a change of scenery for both guys would, benefit them and maybe give them the spark to get in the NHL. But Kirby Reiko, he signed a 1-year, 2-way deal with $725,000, but his minor league salary is $100,000. So we'll see how this trade works out. But I just say it's pretty much apples to apples at this stage. That Shinkaruk never really lived up to what he proved in the WHL and what the Canucks were high on, and Kirby Reiko has just bounced around for the same reason. And then lastly, the last guy that they finally signed, who they qualified, is Noah Hanifin, which was the other big piece that they got in the Dougie Hamilton trade with the Carolina Hurricanes. And there was a lot of speculation and rumors about how much he's going to make and how long it is, but they signed him to a 6-year deal worth $29.7 million overall, which gives him a cap hit of $4.95 million, which is just shy of $5 million, which is almost at least $750,000 less than what Dougie Hamilton was getting for his cap hit when the Calgary Flames signed Dougie Hamilton to a 6-year deal after getting him 3 years ago. But one thing with Noah Hanifin is that the last 2 years of his deal, he has a modified no trade clause, so which means that he'll have a little bit of a say on if the Flames want to trade him where he doesn't want to go. So I still think that deal for Noah Hanifin is definitely paid on potential, and usually that's what a lot of these younger guys with restricted free agents is that you're paying them thinking what their potential is going to be, and there's definitely potential Noah Hanifin where this deal could definitely look like a bargain as soon as immediately, considering they say that he has some upside. He's definitely played 3 full seasons with the Carolina Hurricanes. As I once been, you can look back at my Dougie Hamilton trade video on what my take on all the players involved, and I just say I like the deal and the fact that it's done before training camp, so that there's no distractions. So basically, for all the restricted free agents, they got all their business done in timely fashion. Everyone will be ready for camp. And the other thing that they added, this is an unrestricted free agent, but this was later in the summer, that they added Anthony Peluso, who's another forward that can provide some grit and toughness. I mean, last season he only played 2 games with the Washington Capitals, so I'm not going to count that he provides a ring, because he didn't play on the Washington Capitals team at all that went to the Stanley Cup and win the Stanley Cup. But I know he played a lot of time with the Winnipeg Jets organization, but he signed a 1-year deal, 2-way, where he makes $650,000. That's his cap hit, but his minor league salary is $1.25 thousand. I could see Anthony Peluso just being just an extra forward that they can bring in to if they want to add some muscle, depending on the matchup. But it's just another organizational depth, which is never a bad thing to have, especially if he's got some NHL experience. So that's my take on all the restricted free agents. Overall, I'm pretty happy with all the terms and money. I mean, some guys, obviously the Elias Lin Home, Noah Hanifin, Marcin Kowski, definitely were the biggest fish they had to sign, and I'd say it's nice that they got Brett Kulak, even though the Flames apparently thought he was worth a little less than what you're getting him. And then I just figured both goalies, they deserve another shot, because both Gillies and Riddick have shown that they could play in the NHL. It's just a matter, can they be consistent, or hopefully maybe after last season and maybe getting some time in training camp, they'll prove that they can be a more reliable backup for Mike Smith, so they can spell them off or hopefully not get injured like last season. So now let's move on to the unrestricted free agents, and these guys were free to sign anywhere else. I know there's a couple groups that they have Group 3, which I believe has more to do with amount of time and experience you have, and then there's Group 6, which had a couple players, and seeing the names on the Group 6 were guys who haven't played as much in NHL, and then obviously the UFAs, that players that weren't qualified, they were just strictly an unrestricted free agent. And then we have one case where we bought out Troy Brouwer, where he became an unrestricted free agent. You can see my video on that, but it's time to give an update on all the unrestricted free agents. So the Group 3s they had was Matt Barkowski, defenseman, and then the forward Luke Gazik, forward Tanner Glass, forward the defenseman Cdigo Buff, and then Jarome Jagr was on there. This thing, let's talk about that when we get there. Matt Stajan, Chris Stewart, and Chris Versteeg. And then the Group 6s was Merrick Harvick and Tyler Wotherspoon. And then going back to the unrestricted free agents who weren't qualified is Austin Carroll, Emile Poirier, Daniel Prevost, Nick Shore and Hunter Smith. And then the last guy was Troy Brouwer, who we bought out last month. So let's just go over the free agents that actually signed elsewhere. Spoiler alert, Calgary did not elect to sign any of them, which I definitely agree with that logic considering all the changes we had to make. I mean, if we didn't make the playoffs with the roster we had, we inevitably need to make changes. And if you watch many of Brad Treliving's videos on Flames TV, he always kept saying that we relied too much on too few, and I'd say the too few that we relied on were the top six. Guys like Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau, and we just didn't have any scoring we absolutely needed in the bottom six. So, but some of these UFAs have signed elsewhere, either in the NHL or overseas in Europe. Let's just get the big guy, the future Hall of Famer, out of the way, Jarome Jagr. It was worth giving it a try last year, but I think in hindsight, 2020, it would have been better off if they were humming and hawing about bringing Jagr in. They should have brought him in on a professional tryout so he can at least have got to play some preseason games instead of him trying to rush in with no preseason and that. I mean, that could have been a factor with his injuries, but let's remember he was 45, turning 46. But after, when he couldn't stay healthy and couldn't keep up with the NHL game today, the Flames worked on an exit, and he signed with, the Kladno team in the Czech Republic. So it was announced actually in May that Jarome Jagr was going to sign again with Kladno, the team that he owns. And what I looked up at Jarome Jagr, just out of curiosity, that he only played 5 games with Kladno last season. I think he had 4 assists, including 3 in the first game, but I think I saw a video on YouTube that he took a bad hit, and the Kladno team that he's played on is kind of like the ECHL equivalent to here in North America, which is definitely a step below the HL or even the KHL, but I mean, he's going to turn 47 in February, but I'm going to say this is the last time Jarome Jagr will get listed on an NHL team as a free agent, and I'm going to say it's time for him to decide to hang it up, and there's definitely a spot wide open for him in the Hall, and that's off to a great career to Jarome Jagr. Glad he got to spend a few games with the Flames, but it's time to hang it up. Yeah, the only time I want to see Jagr back in the NHL is if he decides to be a coach or a general manager or scout or whatever. But anyway, the next free agent that got signed was Matt Bartkowski, the defenseman, and he actually signed with the Minnesota Wild on July 1st. It's a similar deal that he had here in Calgary as a 2-way deal, 1 year. It was $650,000. His minor league salary is $350,000. I mean, Matt Bartkowski, I think, even though Calgary is pretty deep at defense, especially with the talent they have on the main team and many guys knocking on the door in Stockton, but I think Matt Bartkowski is just a depth defenseman for anybody. I mean, he had a couple good seasons with the Boston Bruins, and I'm always also going to remember Matt Bartkowski being involved in the famous Boston trade that didn't happen with Jarome Iginla, and then he had that one solid season with the Vancouver Canucks. So I think he's just going to be a depth defenseman for the Minnesota Wild organization. Then the next defenseman, this name might actually sound a little familiar, is Cdigo Buff. He actually signed with the Boston Bruins it's another 2-way deal. Same deal as Matt Bartkowski. He signed a 1-year deal worth $650,000, but his minor league salary is $350,000. He actually signed with the Calgary Flames after Team Canada. He never played a game with the Flames, but he actually was on the Olympic team that won the bronze medal in South Korea. So that's how that name might sound a little familiar, but he's off to Boston. And then the 2 big names that have been great soldiers for the Flames and in NHL for a long time. Matt Stajan, he actually is signing to go over to Germany after playing 1,000 games with the Maple Leafs and the Calgary Flames, and actually Matt Stajan. I mean, he's always going to be remembered as the guy that came here in the Dion Phaneuf trade, which I never was a big fan of the return. And Stajan, he eventually bumped down to the fourth line, and I never really thought he would be a great fourth liner. I mean, he's always with a couple of grinder ringers on the sides, like, hey. I mean, Matt Stajan, all aside, he's been a great soldier, a great teammate, and great person in the community. So, wish him all the best in Germany. I mean, obviously the two best moments that you're always going to stand out for the Calgary Flames is when Matt Stajan scored the shootout goal against the Edmonton Oilers shortly after when they lost their son to an early death, and he pointed up, with a raw emotion, and then he scored that big goal against the Vancouver Canucks in Game 6 in 2015 to give the Flames the go-ahead lead late and eventually win the series. So we'll also wish Matt Stajan all the luck over in Germany. And then Chris Versteeg, who's always been, great depth forward. He was a great soldier here for the last couple seasons. I mean, he's always been, coveted earlier in his career for being a versatile utility forward, and was on a Chicago team that won the Stanley Cup, but he decided to go play in the KHL. So Chris Versteeg is now trying his luck over in Europe. And then Marek Harvick, he's just a grinding, checking forward. He signed with signed over in Switzerland, so that's another guy that is trying his luck overseas, which that starts to seem to be the new reality in this cap world, that players, either don't provide any value or there's just no room for maybe the game's passed them by, given their age or their ability, that maybe they fit in Europe. And some of these guys, they come from Europe and maybe they're homesick and decide, is it worth trying to hang on in being a fourth liner in the NHL, or just make just as much money and be a bigger fish in a small pond. And then the one guy that has been in the Flames organization, the guy that we drafted back in, I believe, 2011, is Tyler Weatherspoon, and he's always been a depth defenseman that never seems to quite stick around, but he actually signed with the St. Louis Blues. This is also a one-year, two-way deal where he signed a one-year contract for $700,000 with his minor league salary of $325,000. So we'll see how Tyler Weatherspoon will play in the St. Louis Blues organization. They still got Jay Bowe there, so maybe you have some familiarity there when Jay Bouwmeester was here in Calgary for a few seasons. And then Daniel Pribble, he was a guy that originally was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and then he didn't. I know that some players, you get 2 years. He eventually became a free agent, and the Flames picked him up. And he's from the Czech Republic, so he's going back home. But I know that he looked highly coveted when we signed him a couple years ago, and then he was just by the organization up. And then last year he was pretty much hurt for the whole season. So that's all I can say about Daniel Pribble, that he originally was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens and couldn't sign him to a deal, and he became a free agent, and the Flames signed him. So things didn't work out there. And then the last unrestricted free agent that signed was Troy Brouwer, which I figured there would be a job for him in the NHL somewhere this season, either if it's by professional tryout or either just have to accept the fact, a different role, or go somewhere where he thinks he's a better fit. But he actually signed only a one-year deal with $850,000, which could be quite a bargain considering that he was getting paid $4.5 million here in Calgary and was expected to be, on the top line, filling the right side with Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Monahan, and that didn't work out, and he, kept going down the depth chart. And $4.5 million would have been too much to spend for a fourth liner. But view with him going to Florida is that he won't necessarily be counted on to provide offense as much as he was here in Calgary. So who knows? I mean, this is definitely could be a show me contract. Maybe he'll be extra hungry knowing that he was bought out. Basically we let him go, and yeah, he's going to make $1.5 million for the next 4 seasons to not play the Flames. It's still a blow to the ego, but that's where Troy Brouwer actually signed up. He signed with the Florida Panthers, and I'm liking the makeup of the Florida Panthers, and I think they're a team that could actually get in as a wild card this year, and Troy Brouwer definitely has, as you can see in my bio video of Troy Brouwer, that he provided a lot of playoff experience, which is one of the reasons why he was coveted at the time when they signed him. So, I mean, the guys that are still available that are Flames free agents, and I definitely don't think they're going to be here, is Luke Gazik, Tanner Glass, Chris Stewart. It's in the group 3. I mean, the only guys I can maybe see possibly, Chris Stewart might. I mean, he didn't work out when we picked him up on waivers from the Minnesota Wild at the deadline, but I could maybe see Chris Stewart get on as a professional tryout for someone just for a depth forward. But I mean, in terms of Gazik and Glass, I mean, all they can provide is just toughness, and the game is definitely evolved away from forcers and that. And then when it comes to our unrestricted free agents that we didn't qualify, I mean, I can still see any one of Austin Carroll, Neal Poirier, Nick Shore. I'm definitely surprised that he didn't get signed by someone up to this point, but he's definitely can be still a serviceable fourth line forward in the NHL. I mean, he came here from Ottawa at the deadline, but he was only in Ottawa for a couple of weeks because he was part of that Dion Phaneuf trade where he played with the Los Angeles Kings. And then Hunter Smith, I mean, I could see a couple of these guys possibly get signed, made to an AHL contract to build their AHL teams, but I mean, the only guys I can really see potentially get a professional tryout between now and camp is Chris Stewart and definitely Nick Shore. But that's just my opinion, and I don't think any NHL GM is going to come across my video and say, "Oh, we should." Anyway, that's definitely my take on all the in-house free agents that the Calgary Flames have had, on both restricted free agents and unrestricted free agents. I mean, it was definitely time to move on from the unrestricted free agents, and we definitely was worth keeping the restricted free agents that we have to keep this team going. And I still think with all the changes that we made, I mean, depending on how the Pacific Division plays out, and I mean, many pundits either say Calgary's either going to just get in or just be out because they're thinking that the Central Division is stacked, and I still think the Central Division is the toughest division in hockey right now, but I think the Pacific Division is wide open, and you never know. I mean, this team could either, surprise someone, but we'll see. Anyway, if you enjoy everything that I cover, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification if you absolutely want to know when the instant I post something, as I'll continue to keep covering videos on Calgary sports teams and any news that comes down. And anyway, if you enjoy everything I said, just hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video.